Okay, what the heck is going on? So many coasters and rides going away and no announcements? Why does it feel like they're just cutting with no regard for their fans? Do they even know what they're doing? With at least 16 different rides and roller coasters closing down, what exactly is going on in this new Six Flags chain? It certainly seems like they're shooting themselves in the feet by closing down so many of these rides without so much as a single post on social media. In this video, I'm going to look into these closures and discuss what could potentially be happening and try to infer what they're doing. I feel like Six Flags Great Adventure is the park that shows some of the biggest signs of the coming changes, so I'll be focusing on this park quite a bit throughout the video. I think it demonstrates really well what the direction of the chain could be moving forward. What all is closing? Well, Six Flags Great Adventure is one of the biggest targets here, so let's start with that park. The rides closing here are Kingda Ka, Green Lantern, Zumanjaro, the Skyway, which was closed in 2022 but finally being removed this year, Twister, and Parachute Tower. Most of these are flat rides, but the two coasters closing are some of the most surprising. At other parks, there's Scrambler at Six Flags Magic Mountain, La Vibora and El Diablo at Six Flags Over Texas, Snake River Falls and Professor Dilbert's Frontier Fling at Cedar Point, Nighthawk, Drop Tower, and Screamweaver at Carowinds, and finally Anaconda and Berserker at King's Dominion. It has also been made clear that it is the CEO's intention to close down California's Great America within 3 years. This is an unprecedented list, and most of these rides seemingly came out of nowhere. It could be easy to just say, oh, well, they're just trying to gut every park and bolster up their darling parks like Cedar Point and Carowinds, but in reality, I think there is a lot more to these closures. There was a major announcement that the new Six Flags chain made not long ago that can highlight a good portion of what could be happening. Let's face it, ever since the recession in 2008, Six Flags has been struggling. The company has had a revolving door of CEOs and hasn't seen any major improvements since. I honestly believe that the previous CEO, Salim Basool, intended to lower the stock price of Six Flags down even further without completely sabotaging the chain. Why do I think this? According to my research, Six Flags saw some of its best stock prices from April in 2017 to September in 2018. After this, the chain started to see a downturn and it got really bad. Its highest point was about $71 per share. When Salim arrived at the chain in 2021, we were seeing share prices of roughly $41. When the merger was announced, the stock prices were sitting at $23 in November of 2023. It just kept going down, even though he claimed he wanted to improve the guest experience at the parks. There just seemingly wasn't enough done to improve the parks in this time, and in some ways, it felt like things were being done to actively worsen the overall experience. Cedar Fair, on the other hand, saw a steep incline from 2010 to 2017, and after plummeting from the pandemic, has remained stable ever since. It is my opinion that Salim deliberately kept shares low in order to entice potential buyers. At one point in the last few years, it seems like there were some mild discussions happening between SeaWorld and Six Flags, but nothing came to fruition there. In all reality, the Six Flags Cedar Fair merger seems all too perfect for what these chains offered and who they targeted. With the merger going through successfully, where could things be going? The big news around the block is that over $1 billion was announced to be invested chain-wide to, quote, enhance guest experience. Part of the reason this merger went through the way it did was so that the winning strategy of then Cedar Fair CEO Richard Zimmerman could be implemented in the new Six Flags chain. These improvements are planned to take place over the course of the next 2 years. This year, there are 7 new coasters opening throughout the chain. I believe that we're going to see a shift in strategy that closely follows the strategies of the former Cedar Fair. Certain roller coaster manufacturers will continue to see frequent installations in the chain, while others will see even fewer. This has me slightly worried for the likes of S&S, RMC, and on a lesser note, Intamin. Six Flags does not seem like it will be very likely to work with these manufacturers in the future, due to the history between them and Cedar Fair. I do, however, see Vekoma and Premier Rides begin to rise in the ranks as potential considerations. It's no secret that B&M will continue to see frequent installations, or will it? Future video? Maybe. Let's get back on topic. To be frank, Great Adventure showed the flaws of the former Six Flags investment strategy like a badge of honor. This is a park that is expensive to operate, and rides like King Ka certainly didn't help with this. It was notoriously unreliable, and the cost to maintain it was completely unsustainable. In one sense, I do believe that some impressive things are coming to this park in 2026 and beyond. How can I be sure of this? Well, if you take a look at both chains before the merger, there were some clearly defined tiers for each of the parks they owned. For the former Cedar Fair chain, there were 3 tiers. In the lowest tier were parks like Michigan's Adventure, Valley Fair, Worlds of Fun, Dorney Park, and California's Great America. In the middle tier, there were parks like King's Dominion, Knott's Berry Farm, and Kings Island, arguably. In the highest tier, we had parks like Carowinds, Cedar Point, and Canada's Wonderland. Parks in the lowest tier saw little to no investment for decades at a time. Parks in the middle tier saw investment and additions slightly more frequently, maybe every 5 to 7 years. And finally, parks in the highest tier sometimes saw yearly investment and additions. Looking at the former Six Flags chain, we can see a similar tiering system. In their lowest tier were parks like Darien Lake, Frontier City, Six Flags America, Discovery Kingdom, Over Texas, and La Ronde. In their middle tier was Six Flags St. Louis, Over Georgia, and New England. In their upper tier were parks like Great Adventure, Magic Mountain, Fiesta Texas, and Great America. Nearly all of the Six Flags parks would see cheap clones installed chain-wide, and the parks in the upper tiers would more than likely see new, ground-up attractions that were much more unique. So what of the individual park strategies? Well, it's clear that some major work is going into parks like Great Adventure. For being one of Six Flags' larger parks, it has a comparatively modest average annual attendance of roughly 2.5 million guests. This is in comparison to Cedar Point's 4 million, and on the low end, King's Dominion's 1 million. This park has a large ride collection and features many huge roller coasters as well. Following Cedar Point's decision a couple years ago, King Ka is being closed down. There is something that will be replacing it, which is supposedly going to be a record-breaking launch coaster. Honestly though, looking at the response to this announcement has most coaster enthusiasts unenthused. Thanks to Cedar Fair and Six Flags' own marketing departments, every new coaster is record-breaking in some way. They set arbitrary records for every new coaster that is announced, meaning that these records could effectively be meaningless. There seems to be a huge plot of land that is opening up with all of the rides that are being cleared out, which for the 2025 operating season is going to leave that section of the park feeling extremely empty. To me, it seems like Great Adventure is going to see some of the largest amount of investment in the entire chain. Sometimes things have to get worse before they get better, right? Possibly. I'm sure that Zimmerman sees the potential for success that Great Adventure has and could easily see some continued large investment in the future. From our visit in 2023, Great Adventure felt like it was in rough shape and needed a ton of TLC in order to get it where it realistically should be. This is a park that has so much potential and is stuck as a hodgepodge of different eras in the chain. I personally believe that Great Adventure could become the Cedar Point of the East Coast. There is a ton of competition in the area, and Great Adventure feels perfect to be revitalized into this. It has the space, the land, and the clearances to be able to do it. So does this mean that the previously mentioned tiering system is going to be completely shaken up and moved around like crazy? It's extremely difficult to tell, but let's look at exactly what's happening. I still see that parks like Great Adventure will most likely be in the upper tier of parks. Here's why I think this is the case. With so many rides being closed at this park, it feels to me like Six Flags wants to completely revitalize it in a smart way. Gone are all the rides that are causing the park to hemorrhage money. Consider this the detox phase for this park. For the millions of dollars spent on maintaining it, there isn't a ton of return on investment the parent company is seeing. Clearly, they see the potential in the park and most likely intend on capitalizing on that. There's most likely going to be one major announcement next year, but keep an eye out for what happens during the off-season at this park in 2025 and 2026. I believe that this park is going to be one of the biggest indicators for how things are going to progress chain-wide. It's clear that a chainsaw is being taken to certain parks initially so that the biggest of money sinks can be removed first. Once that is done, I feel like we'll see a significant drop in rides being removed and instead see more additions. When Zimmerman became the CEO of the new joint Six Flags chain, there were more than likely a large number of internal meetings discussing annual park attendance, average park expenditures, and the works. After analyzing all of these, yes, Great Adventure probably stuck out like a sore thumb with how much money was going down the drain. Yes, it's absolutely terrible to lose a coaster like King of Ka, but let's face it, this coaster was massively expensive and didn't do much to attract crowds to the park. If you look at Cedar Point, do you think people visit the park just for Top Thrill 2? Well, they certainly didn't last year, but this upcoming year, with it actually opening, I still firmly believe this to be the case. People come for the overall experience. Cedar Point is clean, well-maintained, and has an extremely well-rounded lineup of coasters. Great Adventure, on the other hand, does not. There are a few really impressive coasters here, don't get me wrong, but the other attractions at the park don't honestly seem to do much for its overall lineup. Honestly, I'm personally a little surprised that something like Skull Mountain didn't receive the axe. I'm sure that it isn't a very expensive roller coaster to operate and maintain, which probably saved it from this fate. Walking around a park like Great Adventure in 2023 was like being in the middle of the biggest hodgepodge of an amusement park there was. With inconsistent theming, confusing directions on overall decor, and a layout that was somewhat random feeling, it's clear to me why the park is going to see some changes. I don't personally anticipate that we'll see a massive facelift to this park, but I do anticipate there will be a large collection of smaller changes around the park to make it more consistent. For one, I would be surprised if Superman Ultimate Flight was renamed and or rethemed. A coaster like Medusa could potentially see a similar fate. If anything, I could see it being updated while still maintaining the current theme. To add, I could easily see the Justice League area receiving a slight facelift as well, and further improvements from there. The biggest takeaway from all of this is that the merger was an expensive thing, and Zimmerman was brought in to revive the Six Flags chain of parks. Most of the other CEOs in the past have tried to use a deft touch to improve things in the chain, but this clearly wasn't enough. For some of these parks, drastic measures were needed to keep them from outright failing. That's what he's here for, and that's what he's doing. I won't sit here and claim to know why Zimmerman had some of the rides closed that did without any announcement, but I anticipate it was due to costs. Why spend the extra money to host a special event and worry about share prices being hit right after the merger, when they could quietly close them and avoid a major hit on the stock market? It'll be interesting to see how these next 2 years pan out, as $1 billion of investment is a lot and can seemingly go a long way at these parks. So this leaves me with a few questions. Can Zimmerman successfully steer such a large ship? Is Great Adventure going to see some major improvements, or is it doomed to move into the lower tier parks of the new chain? Later this year, I'm going to provide a report card to see how this first major operating season goes under the new management. Hopefully, things are looking well. Thank you so much for watching this video. Don't forget to leave a like and comment below and hit that bell icon. Special thanks to our Patreon supporter, Future Collective. $1 a month helps me bring even more content to you guys, and I even have some exclusive content coming, so check it out. Check the description below to find links to the rest of our pages. Thanks for watching the video, and ride on, Coaster Maniacs!